Hello and welcome back to DevOps Fundamentals by SkillSpeed. In this video, we are going to talk about continuous integration, what exactly it is and why do we need it. So first of all, what exactly is a continuous integration? So it refers to the practice of integrating code early and very often during development phase by the developers. So let's say we have 3 developers working for a single project. They will integrate their code on a daily basis at least, or if possible multiple times in a single day, which eventually will trigger a number of jobs, a number of tests which are typically automated in nature. And then based on the test results, either the code will pass next in the delivery pipeline, or it will come back to the developers if there is any kind of bugs or if there is any issues reported as per the test results. The main idea is to avoid integration hell, wherein developers used to wait till the end of the project to integrate or merge all their code, leading to face enormous difficulties in integration and wastage of time. So what basically this point says is that earlier the integration practice was in such a way that developers will write their code for maybe a couple of weeks at least, and then they will come back. They will wait for all the integration tests to be done at the end of the delivery pipeline. And what will happen if there is any problem with the integration, which almost always used to be, they have to work again. Most of the times they have to rework the whole code again, and then they have to go through all over again the process of delivery pipeline and doing the development, design and code and all those things. So this was known as integration hell, and as per one article which I remember reading, it was more than 80% of the time which was developers' time was wasted in integration and rather than writing the actual code. So continuous integration gives way to continuous delivery, which is the next step in the pipeline. It's a process that merges continuous integration with automated deployment, tests and release, creating a continuous delivery solution. So basically you have multiple steps involved in continuous delivery, and it takes over from continuous integration. So this is we are referring basically to the number of steps which takes place after the continuous integration is done, which would mean that the automated tests are done and they are successful. So you have to go through, or your code has to go through a number of steps before it goes to the production machines. So all those intermediate steps in an automated fashion known as continuous delivery. So one important thing to remember, that if you have implemented continuous delivery in your pipeline or in your workflow, that does not mean that you are deploying everything in your production machines. It means that every change is proven to be deployable. It's not deployed, but it's deployable, which means that you are ready to deploy at any given point in time, which is one of the primary tenets of continuous delivery and one of the most important aspects of measuring your DevOps practices as well, how successfully you have implemented DevOps in your project. So let's take a look at a traditional or a typical CI/CD pipeline. How does it look like? So you have once the tests are written, once the code is written, the developers have written their code base and they have the source code ready. It will go through a couple of unit tests. Then you will do the code reviews and those sort of things for the quality of the code to check. And then it will be deployed to the test environment, where integration tests, regression tests, all those sort of tests will be run on this piece of code to check the feasibility and the stability of the code base. Once that is done, it will be deployed to production environment or maybe pre-prod environment. From there, it will be done the acceptance test. So from there, it will be deployed to the pre-prod environment, and then there will be some acceptance tests and further whatever is required before the code is deployed eventually to the production machines. And one more important step will be the packaging and archiving of your source code or of your artifact files, typically a var file or a jar file or an exe file. So you put them in some kind of artifact repository, such as Nexus or Artifactory or any of the other popular artifact repositories out there. So just a different look at a CI/CD. You have multiple developers. They are committing the codes, which is going inside the source code repository. From there, automated tests are triggered in the form of CI builds. Now CI can be Jenkins, it can be Bamboo, it can be TeamCity. So again, the tool is not very important here. We need to understand the overall concept. We can choose any tools depending on our choice and the feasibility, that the amount which we have to pay and things like that. So again, choosing a tool requires a lot more introspection before you go ahead and decide on one single tool. And finally, what happens, continuous integration servers, they do compile and unit testing, integration testing, packaging. Once everything is done, it will deploy the applications onto the actual production web servers. Another look at the CI/CD overview. If you see, the check-in is done, then from there it goes to the source repository, from there a CI server, and build and test and all those things are taking place. And based on the results, it will either go back to the stakeholders, which are developers. If you see here, this particular line is denoting when the tests have failed. Maybe some kind of bug has been reported, or maybe some problem has been reported in the code which is not stable. So it will go back to the developers. If it is successful, if all the test results are successful, it will go further in the pipeline, and based on the result of each and every step, it will either move forward or it will go back to the developers, as you can see here. So it can go back to the developers at any stage of these CI/CD pipeline, right? So how do you implement some of the kind of best practices, or maybe the common practices rather, which you follow when you want to implement a good continuous integration pipeline? So the primary requirement of CI/CD to be successful is to merge the changes of the developers as often as possible. This is one of the key requirements. Now, continuous integration is based on this principle of frequency. That is something very important here. If you don't commit your code on a daily basis or multiple times in a single day, then you cannot achieve continuous delivery or continuous integration. So testing the code more often, that helps to find the issues or the bugs pretty early in the release cycle, and that is very important, and that is one of the most important results of implementing continuous integration. And yes, so automated tests, this is something very important, because when you have continuous integration and when you want to have a good continuous integration, continuous delivery pipeline, you cannot rely on manual testing procedure. You need to have automated tests written, and they should be triggered automatically by a CI server like Jenkins. Yes, one integration server is required, something like Jenkins or Bamboo or TeamCity, which is required for running the automated tests for every new commit by the builder, by the developer. Most of the work is done by automated tests, and this technique requires a unit test framework. So you need to have a proper testing framework in place, something like maybe Selenium or JUnit or something like that. There is a build server performing these tests, so developers can continue working while tests are being performed. So for testing, the major advantage of automated testing is that you don't have to sit around while the tests are being done. So you just put the code in those CI servers, and again, that is again a automated process. You just need to commit the code. The rest of the things is automated. So what happens is you get the results after some time, and you don't have to do anything at all once your CI pipeline is implemented properly. So advantages, what are the end result or the advantages you get if you implement CI in your projects? The first one is that since you have increased the frequency, so merging often, what does it give you? It helps you reduce the bugs moving to production, as most of them are captured early in the cycle through automated tests. So once you have written the tests, and once you have written the code, and they are being tested in an automated fashion, you can be rest assured that most of the bugs will be captured very early in the release cycle, and by the time you reach the production or even the pre-prod servers, most of the bugs or issues will be taken care by then. So what happens is, as a result, very less number of bugs get shipped to productions, as regressions or any of those sort of things are captured early by the automated tests. Release gets easier as all integration issues have been taken care already. So building the release is easy because integration issues have been solved already. So cost effective, because what happens is when you do the testing costs are reduced to a great extent due to CI server running most of the tests. So you don't need to have a big manpower just to run those tests and capture the results and sending those results to the right stakeholders. You have already taken care of those things with the help of a good and automated CI pipeline. A deployable system is ready at any given point. This is one of the most important and one of the most quantifiable benefits of continuous integration. So record of evolution of the project from the beginning. So you get to see, you always have the big picture, and you always are able to see where your project is going, where it has come from, what are the changes you have implemented in the last couple of commits or releases or in the past couple of days. Right, and yes, the tests, actually the costs are reduced drastically because your CI server can run hundreds of tests in a matter of seconds. So that is one of the very important advantages of implementing a CI pipeline. And QA teams can focus more on quality improvements rather than regular testing, thus leading to more productivity. So what happens is, instead of QA team doing the regular manual work like running the test, capturing the results, sending it to their stakeholders, they actually spend less time on testing, and they can focus on significant improvements to overall quality of the software delivery process. So that was about the introduction to continuous integration, the concepts behind it, how do you implement them, and what are the advantages. In the next video, we will talk about Jenkins in particular, what exactly the tool gives you, what are the advantages and things like that. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.